Hello, hello. Oh, look, the Mechs are in the house. Welcome back. Good to see you. Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. My name's Yvonne English. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation here at Grove City College. And we exist to serve the entire student body, regardless of major, for speaking events, programs, competitions, etc. You can find more information at gccentreprenurship.com or at GCC Entrepreneur on Insta, Facebook, and Twitter. So tonight is our fall installment for the Richard G. Staley 62 Visionary Entrepreneur Speaker Series. And we are very lucky to have an alum from the class of 62, who has endowed the speaker series to bring back not only alums, but others who have really made strides in entrepreneurship and business. And today, I don't get to introduce our speaker, but I'm very excited that he's back. In other exciting news, I'm going to bring someone up. Usually I have a student introduce our speaker, but today I have a special person introducing our speaker, and it is Ari Carter. And Ari has joined us. She graduated just this past May as an entrepreneurship major here, and she has joined us in the center as a marketing and outreach coordinator, and I'm so happy to have her back in the fold so quickly. If I could do that with all of you, I probably would. So, Ari, if you could, why don't you come up and tell these lovely people what they're about to experience.
Hi everyone, super excited to have you all here tonight, and I'm really excited to hear what Dave has to say tonight. He was in the center earlier talking to some students and we got a little preview, so I'm really excited and you guys are in for a special treat tonight. So Dave is a writer and a digital strategist, originally from New York, although he's lived kind of a nomad life the last few years, which I think you're going to hear about tonight in more detail. He's a portfolio entrepreneur, so he's been dabbling in multiple ventures, endeavors, and career paths over the last few years. His writing has been featured in media such as Smashing Magazine, CNBC, Business Insider, Fortune, and more. He is the owner and editor of the Entrepreneur's Handbook, a publication on Medium.com, which covers entrepreneurship, startups, tech, and design. As a matter of fact, some credible sources even consider him an entrepreneurship expert. He is a former columnist in Inc.com, where he wrote about innovation, creativity, and business ideas. He has even interviewed Shark Tank's Damon John. He is the author of Runway Millionaire, a 384-page novel about a family tested by crime, betrayal, and radical forgiveness. And if that isn't enough, he's also the CEO of Party Cues, which is a successful mobile app on a mission to help people with social anxiety replace awkward silences with interesting conversations. So if you please help me welcome our speaker.
Hello. Can you guys hear me? Hi, everyone. How are we doing? It's good to be here. Two things really quick. I wanted to say thank you to Yvonne English, Tim Sweet, Lynn Stillwagon, Ari. You did your homework. Great intro. Thank you. I want to say thank you to the Entrepreneurship Department for bringing me in. Super excited to be here. Also, by a show of hands, how many of you have seen a football game in the last couple weeks? Okay. Back when I was at Grove City, that number would have been less than half. And let me just say it's been super cool to see my younger brother Wes Schools, along with his team and the coaches, completely turn around that program since when I graduated in 2012. So it's amazing to watch him play, and I'm super proud of my brother. So. Okay, guys. We're talking about entrepreneurial freedom, how I created multiple income streams while living in a different city every 3 months. You guys are lucky because the original version of this title was this. But this is where we landed. So that's a joke, and I know a lot of jokes about unemployed people, but none of them work. Yeah. So I'm hoping to have some fun tonight, share some stories with you, share some lessons that I've learned, that I hope inspire you. So here's the game plan for tonight. We're going to start out with a goal, and that, if I'm successful, will happen tonight. I want to share a little bit about me and kind of put visual images to that introduction and kind of go in a little bit more so you have an understanding of what I do. And then we're going to discuss a problem, why we're here tonight. And then I'm going to give you a 7-step roadmap to find your entrepreneurial freedom. And then I'll end with a final thought. And then if we have time, we'll go to questions. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. Goal for tonight: to free you from the pressure to find the one thing you're supposed to do with your life. And secondly, to help you find your path to entrepreneurial freedom. So, that's the goal. Moving right along. Bam! About me. Let me just answer a little bit about me. How many of you heard of the Enneagram? Anybody? Okay, cool. If you know your number and are bold enough, shout it out. 9, 4, 1, 1, 3. Okay, anybody else? 5, 2, 3. I heard a wing in there, so we have a Enneagram nerd in the audience. Okay, cool. I bring this up only to share with you that I'm a 3, and being that we're in the entrepreneurship department, I wouldn't be surprised if there were a number of 3s in the room, achievers. So the common thread between everything that I do is that I'm a writer. I love words. I love creating with words. I've been published in a number of publications, including Inc. magazine and Axios. Like it was mentioned before, I have interviewed Damon John. I was on the phone with him for 22 minutes, just Damon John and me. And I was really struggling with imposter syndrome at the time. But it was an amazing conversation. He's a really chill dude. It started out kind of like cold, like question, answer. But as we progressed, he started to warm up a little bit. He cut some jokes and had some strong language come out, and then we started laughing. It was a good phone call. I've had the privilege of interviewing some really cool people, like the CEO, Peter Cancro of Jersey Mike's, best sandwich shop, in my opinion. And then also the CEO, Dave Long of Orange Theory Fitness. This guy doesn't go to sleep unless he spends at least 5 minutes in an ice bath every night. So that's cool. And then how I built this. Anyone hear of How I Built This, the podcast? The best podcast for entrepreneurs, in my opinion, done by Guy Raz. I interviewed him about how to interview. Fascinating conversation. If you search the article, I can shoot it to you. But I've also written on LinkedIn. One time I wrote an article that received over 2 million views. It's quite the experience. I followed a formula that I found. And if you reach out to me, I'll share that formula with you. It's by Josh Fetcher, a copywriter. That story was republished on CNBC Make It. So that's me as a writer. Editor, I am the founder and editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur's Handbook, a publication on Medium with 77,000 followers. Have you guys heard of Medium before? Anyone? Okay, I love Medium. In my opinion, it's the single best place to read and write on the web. So definitely check it out. That's where I made my start as a writer. I'm also the CEO of Party Cues Inc. I co-founded Party Cues with a fellow GCC alum. He's the technical co-founder, CP Daly. And in the last few, how many of you have been on a date in the last few weeks? Okay. Good, wow, we have an attractive crowd. Good for you all. Okay, Party Cues. The reason I asked that is the number one category on Party Cues is date night. Party Cues is a conversation starter app. It helps keep the conversation going. So your next date night, download Party Cues, free app, ask some questions, and you'll fall in love. Yeah, available on both platforms. I'm also an author. Runaway Millionaire is a modern-day retelling of the parable of the prodigal son. I wrote it because it's what brought my mother, who's in the audience, to faith, that story. And so I really wanted to experience that final conversation at the end. And that's why I wrote this novel, to see what those characters would say. I'm a consultant. I work with a couple cool clients. Running through them really quick. Trove does on-demand insurance, turning insurance on and off with your phone. Never been done before. Gate is a smart lock. It's the first video smart lock on the market. And Stand Together is a nonprofit in DC, reversing cyclical poverty through entrepreneurship. And then Mitch Cox Companies, who you're going to learn more about tonight, commercial real estate company. So some of my clients that I get to work with. I'm also a nomad. Over the past 2 years, I've lived in a different city every 3 months with my wife and 2 cats. Everything we own fits into our Honda CR-V, and it's been quite an adventure. We started from Arlington, Virginia, went to Phoenix, and then up to Salt Lake City, then to San Francisco, Salisbury, Maryland, and then down to Richmond, Virginia, which is where we're currently based. At one point, this is a picture of everything in our car with my cat Calvin. We did a 55-hour drive across the country straight. My wife was working as a nurse night shift, and so she took the night shifts in the car, and I drove during the day. 55-hour ride with 2 cats in the car. It was a good experience. I'm also a father. I'm going to be a father in February. Got a little entrepreneur on the way. Super pumped for that next chapter of life. So like I said, we're in Richmond, Virginia, and that concludes a little bit about me. All right, let's talk about why we're here. Let's get down to why are you guys sitting in these seats tonight. I want to share some news with you. The American dream is dying. What do you think the American dream is? When I think of the traditional American dream, I think of going to school, getting good grades so you can get a good job at a good company, then you buy a house, you raise a family, rise in the ranks at work, of course utterly happy and in love with your coworkers and your bosses, until you can finally retire at age 65, at which point you have all the money you want to do what you feel like doing, and because you have loads of money. So this is going away. Consider the following data about the future of work. The average number of times a person changes jobs, 10 to 15 times. U.S. workers are quitting at the fastest rate since the internet boom 17 years ago, according to the Wall Street Journal. In April 2018, a couple months ago, 3.4 million people chose to leave their jobs. Why? The number of U.S. freelancers jumped by 8.1% over the last 3 years. Now check this out. At this rate, freelancers will be the majority of the U.S. workforce by 2027. Why? I believe it's because a single lifelong income stream is an antiquated idea. We have multiple careers. We have side projects. One study found that 35% of people have a paying side project, and more people are working for themselves. It's an unrealistic proposition today. Not only that, but having a single employer is risky. You're putting all your eggs in one basket. You could be let go of at any time. It's outside your control, and it's ultimately fragile. So consider this question. What do these jobs all have in common? Insurance underwriter, financial analyst, inventory managers, farmers, pilots, military soldiers. Any guesses? Service work. Yeah, I think you're onto something there. Not the answer I was looking for.
Trading your time.
Trading your time. Yeah. How about this? They may not exist in 20 years. In 2013, if you go to this website, willrobotstakemyjob.com, kind of serious, 2 data scientists published a report called The Future of Employment: How Susceptible Are Jobs to Computerization? It was a study of 702 jobs, cross-referenced with data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And if you plug in a title of one of those jobs, it returns a percentage likelihood that that job will be replaced by automation or artificial intelligence. So, accountants and auditors, I don't know, something to think about. The point is that it's risky. The point is that having a single employer is risky, and that you might want to have other income streams. Having a single employer is also constrictive in the sense that it isn't utilizing us to our fullest potential. Check out some of these trends. Employees are saying, according to Gallup, 87% of employees worldwide are not engaged. Employees are saying, I feel like I could be doing more at my job. This is why I quit my agency job in Washington, D.C. I felt underutilized and unsatisfied in my position. I could be doing more. Digital nomadism, co-working spaces, remote working, all on the rise. They're exploding. Why? People want more freedom at work. They don't want to be constricted. Also, work-life balance, we've heard that term before, is being redefined to work-life blend. Bringing work home. We have these supercomputers on our hips with our phones. We're managing work on the go, at home, everywhere. It's not so much I leave work and I come home, I leave home, I go to work. It's happening all at once, all at the same time. Tim Cook, fun fact, Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, only works using his phone. He doesn't work with a computer. There's a 42% increase in solo traveler bookings over the past 2 years, meaning more people are hitting the road alone than ever before. People are traveling. Not only do people want to work at home, they want to work from anywhere. They want to see the world. So, to sum up the problem that we're addressing tonight, a single dream career is unrealistic. It's an unrealistic expectation. It's risky, and it's constrictive. So there's simply too much opportunity, too much to learn and experience, too much life to be lived to stay in one job your whole life and wait until retirement to be free to do what you find fulfilling. So the American dream is dying. Maybe we should say it's being redefined. So what is it being redefined to? For some of us, not everyone, but for some, I believe it's becoming more about this idea of entrepreneurial freedom. So that's the problem that we're working with. Now let's look at what entrepreneurial freedom is and dive into how to get there. Sound good? How we doing? Cool. Still on board? All right. Here's a definition, a working definition for us tonight. An untethered entrepreneurial freedom is an untethered, independent way to make a living doing what you love to do. The hard part is here. So that's because that's the hard part. We're going to be focusing on that tonight. You can live anywhere, be independent, and do what you love to do. It doesn't mean you're going to eat. So you saw how personally I've built multiple income streams, but now I want to get into how you can build multiple income streams and achieve what my friend coined portfolio lifestyle entrepreneurship. To be honest, for me, it's not been a straightforward, clear path. It's had a number of challenges. I've made mistakes. There are always twists and turns, but I'm here to give you a path forward with 7 steps that I've learned that will help you answer this question for yourself. How do you build multiple income streams doing what you love to do from anywhere? Sound good? If I'm successful tonight, you'll have a clearer idea, direction, and inspiration to answer this question. So here we go. Here's the roadmap. Get excited. 7 steps to entrepreneurial freedom. Step 1, acquire a skill you love. It's a foundation for your career. It will serve you for the rest of your life. This is the asset you will use to help others succeed in everything. So for me, it's writing, right? Ironically, I hated writing in school. I wasn't any good at it. My grades were, as Jordan Peterson would say, not good. Didn't enjoy it. I didn't see much purpose in it until my first job. My first job out of school was as a marketing coordinator at the Kingsport Office of Small Business Development and Entrepreneurship, Cosby. And my first boss, Andre Wilcox, taught me a skill that changed my life. Andre taught me how to write a press release. She was very hard on me. Hold on, I know when you see press release, I know what you're thinking. She was very hard on me with structure, clarity, brevity, sticking only to the facts. And I know when you see press release, you're probably thinking, how fascinating, please tell me more, press release, what could be more exciting? I know. But here's what happened. After I wrote a press release and I sent it to Cosby's email list, it would be reprinted in the local newspaper. I would see that I wrote it in a newspaper and that everyone got it, and it made me realize that a press release impacts the business world, people's lives, and a press release can change how people make decisions. It can alter events in the real world. Like a press release matters. And that attached the function, the skill of writing, to impact and meaning and results. And so that's when I fell in love with writing. Then I found medium.com and started writing. I just threw up articles as I learned about entrepreneurship, kind of like an open journal, into Entrepreneur's Handbook, my publication. One of the articles I wrote about everything. I just wrote like twice a week, publishing articles. One, for example, that I rank number one in Google with is if you Google how to kill a housefly, one of my articles comes up based on an experience I had where I killed 5 to 6 houseflies with Windex, and it was the most sanitary, civilized way of killing houseflies. And now I get emails from people saying, hey, so that all-purpose cleaner, should it be vinegar-based or? It's like, I don't know. So I love writing, but it doesn't have to be writing. I would do it for free. It can be anything. Your skill can be anything that adds value to someone or something else. So how do you find it? 3 questions that will help you acquire a skill you love. With what do you love to create? See, I believe everyone is innately called, designed to create in some way. For me, it's words, but it could be carpentry, could be code, could be culinary, could be any medium that allows you to create something and exercise your creative mind. So think of, with what do you love to create? Then, let me tell you a story. A mentor took me out to lunch one day, sat across from the table from me. He pushed the salt shaker towards me and asked me this question. He said, imagine if this was $1 billion, right here. How would you spend your time? It's an interesting question because it removes the need to make money. It's not how would you spend the money, it's how would you spend your time now that money is not an issue. What would you do? Combine this with question 1, with what do you love to create, and proceed to question 3. How can you get really, really good at that one thing? So once you find something, you got to get really, really good at it. Nat Eliason, one of my favorite questions, said in an interview about SEO, search engine optimization, that 90% of SEO expertise is writing the best answer on the internet to a specific question. And the other 10% is the technical stuff, like meta tags, alt tags, keyword distribution. It's incredibly hard. So you got to be really good. So how do you get really good? You work hard, you practice. Benjamin Franklin, I'm reading his biography now. I highly recommend it. He said, being one of the best writers from history, he would take the writers the greatest writers in London, take their arguments, read them, and try to recreate them from memory, and then compare his to theirs, and see if you could say what they were saying in less words, with greater clarity. And that's how he got really, really good at writing, and that formed the foundation of Benjamin Franklin's career. So find something you love to do that helps others succeed and become really good at it. This is step one. This is the foundation. Acquire a skill you love. Step two is create things and fail a lot. So using that skill, maybe it's not a skill yet, and it's just something you love to do. And this could be a way of getting good at it. Create something and launch it out into the world. But why fail, though? When I told a friend about the importance of failure, he asked a clarifying question. But the goal isn't failure, right? It's true. It's not. Nobody wants to fail. Yes. But failure means something completely different to an entrepreneur. Failure means you took a risk and you learned something. Elon Musk said, if you're not failing, you're not innovating enough. Failure means that you took a risk, you're reaching out beyond your current capacity, and you could either succeed or fail. If you fail, you've learned something. Jeff Bezos said, failure and invention are inseparable twins. To create something new, to do something that no one else has done before, there's probably a risk that you could fail, but if you don't take that risk, invention won't happen. So not only does failure teach you something useful, it also develops in you a resilience that you will need as an entrepreneur. I have about half a dozen examples of failure from my own life in the last 6 years. Let me share a story with you and the lessons that I learned. So infographic. How many of you guys have heard of infographics? Cool, yeah, they're long, data-dense forms of content that help explain a complex topic with graphic design, numbers, graphs. They're amazing. They're cool. A problem that I noticed with infographics is when you share them on social media, namely, like say Facebook, it would zoom into the center of the infographic, and by sharing it, you wouldn't see the top and bottom, often important parts of the infographic on Facebook. So I wanted a way to be able to show the entire infographic in the image pair measurements of Facebook. This is an example of what it would look like. You have what font is your state, and it would zoom in only to the middle. So someone from another city would see this and be like, oh, I don't care, my city's not on it. But if they could see the whole thing like this, then they might open the infographic. So that was my brilliant idea, and I launched it, put it on Product Hunt. My grandfather invested $5,000 in me to build a web app, hired a UK development team, and we built infographic.com. Launched it, and it made a total of $9. About 800 people signed up for the service, the free service, and you would buy credits to remove the watermark on the infographic. The $9 came from a fellow 2 years later when I kind of abandoned the project, but left it up, from a guy who had a newsletter about discovering UFOs. And so he messages me on the Facebook page and says, hey, I got my credits, and it doesn't seem to be working. What's wrong? I said, oh, it's been pretty much shut down. Let me refund your money. But that was the first $9 of passive income that I ever made. So what I learned from infographic, yes, it failed. Money went down the drain, but I learned lessons that are assets now to all my future projects for the rest of my life, which is why I always say to my grandpa, you were my first investor. I'm 28. We'll see what the future holds. But I'm always going to be able to say, Grandpa, you were my first investor. So what I learned, do not cram everything you have ever learned about startups, tech, and design into your first startup. So I was writing about startups, writing about entrepreneurship, like learning how to design a logo, how to tell the story arc of your startup, the about page, crafting it perfectly. using like Unsplash to have gorgeous photos all over the website, when really I was taking it way too seriously. Ephographic would have been great as a Chrome plugin. Like it's a utility tool. It's something that's like simple, that isn't like this official huge startup. So I was just like cramming everything that all startup founders do into my first startup, putting way too much pressure on it and taking myself too seriously. So the next lesson was, if there is absolutely no competition, take pause. This could be a terrible sign. Maybe there's a reason that there is no competition. The work around this is that you want to talk to an actual person who's going through that struggle and has that need, and build it for them. Build it for a real person. Don't just think of, and I think it's the next, clever products are never as successful as helpful products. When I told people the concept of ephographic, especially if they're in marketing, they'd be like, oh yeah, clever, oh, that makes sense. Okay, cool, like good idea, got it. And I'd be like, I'm a genius. I just set up this new company that's going to take off because it's a great idea. It was clever, it didn't actually help a real person. So when like thinking of an idea, solve a problem, a pain point for someone, and don't just ask what they think, ask how much they're going to pay to use it. Pick one need and one buyer profile and focus on making it a perfect fit. Exactly like talking to that person. A number of different people could have used ephographic, and I'm kind of going through this with party cues a little bit. Party cues, like a lot of different people could use party cues. But what if I focused on married couples for over 4 years, where at night they ask themselves the same two questions: how was your day? How are the kids? Roll over, knock out, fall asleep. What if we focused on that niche target demographic and then expanded from there? With ephographic, it was kind of like, this is for everybody. Everybody should use this. They'll love it. It helps so many different people. Pick one buyer profile and niche down and focus on that. That was the lesson I learned. One phrase that I love to share is, teachers teach, coaches coach, entrepreneurs fail. It's part of the job. It's kind of like core to how we learn and what we do, because when that one time doesn't fail, it's going to explode. And so it's kind of like that's the way we work. Failure, if you want an equation, looks like this: 0 equals 0 plus 0. Where I don't think I got that right. It's basically like failure. If you don't learn anything from that failure, then it is true failure. Like if you did not learn at all. But if you learn something, even though the business idea or the project itself didn't take off, that's not failure. You learned something, and now you can apply that to the rest of your life. Rudyard Kipling, this is what I tell myself whenever I experience success or failure. I love this quote. It's from his poem, If. It's a quatrain. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same. So when you're failing, when you're succeeding, you are not defined by success or failure. You're on your own, regardless of whether you're succeeding or failing. And you just press on. And so that is why you should create and fail. Failure's not a bad thing. It means you took a risk and you learned something. Number 3 in our entrepreneurial roadmap, so we have a skill that we love. We're creating with it, and maybe we're failing a little bit, but we're learning. What do you do now? You make big asks. And here's why. You don't get what you don't ask for, right? It's a popular maxim. I couldn't find who said it, whether it was Mahatma Gandhi or Stevie Wonder. But big asks can accelerate your career. A big ask is audacious. It's a bold proposal to do something that outsizes your current capacity to do it. A big ask could be an email, could be a conversation, could be a phone call, a direct message over social. It could easily get rejected or ignored. But if it goes through, It could change the course of your career forever. Let me give you some examples of big asks from my life. Ask number one, create a job that doesn't exist. So this first example is the story of my second job out of college. And it comes back to where we're sitting right here at Grove City College. John Seward, Professor Meck will recall John Seward. He was guest lecturing at one of our finance classes. I was sitting in the back, not being the best student, not paying too much attention, not being too engaged. That was sophomore year. Didn't think much of it, right? Senior year rolls around, and I'm working on a business plan for the Penn Grove Hotel down the street. This is my senior year project. And I needed a hotel business plan. So I remember, John Seward, he talked about hotel finance. He probably has like a real life hotel business plan that I could look at. And so I shoot him a note, and he sends back an example business plan, and on it, it says Johnson City, Tennessee. And I was like, my wife just got accepted, my fiance just got accepted there for nursing school, and we're headed there. Anyway, so cool that he lives there, and that's where the hotel is. When we ended up living there for 4 years in Johnson City, right after we got graduated and got married, one thing leads to the next. I find myself in the car with John Seward and my wife, and he's giving us a tour around Johnson City. This story is going somewhere, I promise. And he writes a recommendation letter for me to get the Cosby job. He gets my wife her first job at Mitch Cox Companies. She was the receptionist for 8 months. And it's going somewhere, I swear. Having one car, I dropped her off and picked her up every day from work. Over the next 8 months, I get to know the company a little bit. Like I'm in there 5 days a week, getting to know the different presidents of the companies, real estate companies. And I noticed something. I noticed they were missing a lead on their marketing efforts. There's 5 different companies under an umbrella of Mitch Cox Companies, but nobody had their thumb on marketing. And so I went to John and I was like, hey John, I noticed you're missing a marketing person, and I was wondering if I might put my hat in the ring. So I wrote up a job description, the title, the salary, and I showed it to John. After several meetings with the rest of the leadership team at Mitch Cox Companies, I find myself, for the next 2.5 years, the director of marketing at Mitch Cox Companies. And I owe it all to John Seward and his generosity towards my wife and me. It was an amazing job at an amazing company. This is a photo with Mitch Cox, the CEO of the company, on my last day. And it all started sitting back in the back of a GCC classroom that I didn't really take seriously. But the lesson here is that what could be called boring classes can change your life. But the point here is that a big ask can accelerate your career. Briefly, I want to tell you another quick story about a big ask, the PartyQ's deal. So PartyQ's, the app, is actually in the process of being potentially acquired. I can't share much about it, but since April, I've been in negotiations with the largest conversation starter card set company in the country about partnering where PartyQ's would become their official app. It's an exciting deal. We're getting close. But I mention this because it all started with going to their website. I love the brand. I'm sure you've all heard of it. But I go to their website and I open up the contact page and just fill out the form. And I write a decently long email pitching, hey, you guys don't have an app. We don't have cards. We kind of, there's a potential deal here. Would you be interested in a conversation? Within 2 days, I get an email back from the president of the holding company saying, hey, are you up for an introductory call? So we are now kind of off to the races and buttoning up that deal as we speak. I'm expecting an email anytime this week. So a big ask starts small, just a contact form on a website, but can really open up to big opportunities. So, how to make a big ask? How do you make a big ask? Spend time and study with a brand with which you'd like to work. Where do you want to work? What's a company you'd love to work for? What's a brand you love? Think about that. Recognize a person or the company's needs. What does the company need? Do you know someone at that company who's missing a position on their team, who's kind of being dragged down maybe on social media? Like, by researching that company, that brand, what can you find that you could fill with that skill that you've acquired, that you love? Reach out, build relationships, and the next step in the roadmap is going to elaborate on this. But reach out. It's an email, direct message, get in contact, go to an event where that person is, get in contact with that person, start making your name familiar to them. Propose how you can fill that need. So once they're familiar with you, you see that need, then write it up. And this is not something you can do quickly or with a small proposal. Like, you really have to understand the need that you can fill. Propose it to them, shoot it over the fence, negotiate the terms, and sign the dotted line. That's how you make a big ask that will dramatically accelerate your career. See, a lot of times people don't think about making an ask because it's like, oh, nobody does that, or like, it's not going to work out. But think about the company, like, what's your dream job? Like, what do you really want? Ask for it. Like, go and get to know the company, let them get to know you, put it in an email and see what happens. Could change your career. Number 4, we got our skill. We are creating things and failing a lot. We're making big asks. Now, who do we make those big asks to? We network. Networking creates opportunities to make big asks. If you don't have people that you're rubbing shoulders with, getting to know, a big ask is going to sound cold. So by getting out and going to networking events, you're meeting people who have the ability to answer your ask. People in your life are your most valuable asset. A couple quick stories. $75,000 website. That deal came from an awards event. I went to a networking event, missed the guy, knew that he was the CMO, knew that he won an award, and because of that I saw that he'd won, and then followed up with an email and said, like, hey, congratulations on your award. Was wondering if, I worked at a digital agency at the time, was wondering if we could get coffee and I could tell you a little bit about what we do. And he was like, okay. An email chain started from there. One thing led to the next. I pitched them. We had natural conversations. They met our team. And then a $75,000 website deal came through the door. Going to an awards event plus an email, that's where it started. I went to a conference where Guy Raz was speaking, and I love Guy Raz, and I really wanted to interview him about how to interview. And so he's interviewing the vice president of sales at Square Cash. And after he's done, I get in line to talk with him, standing there, and I'm so nervous going to talk with Guy Raz. But when I talked with him, I said, hey, I'm Dave Schools, I write for Inc. magazine. I love what you do. I love how I built this and how you interview people. I think it'd really help a lot of people. Would you mind if we talked about me interviewing you at some point? He's like, cool, thanks, Dave. Yeah, shoot me an email. Instead, I shoot him a direct message on Instagram, and he responds. And then it went over to email. Then we set up a call, and I got to talk to Guy Raz. Happened just going to a conference where he was speaking, getting in line, shooting him an email or an Instagram message. I went to another conference. One of my best writing gigs ever, $1 per word. Like I get $1 if I write the. This is a major bank that paid this rate, which is incredible. The New Yorker pays $2 per word. I'm at this conference and the guy's speaking, and we leave the main room and go out to the food table, and he's there like poking anchovies with a plate and eating, and I'm there, and I'm like, hey. And I told him, hey, like, I write for Inc. magazine. I've interviewed a number of CEOs, and I know his position was the VP of editorial for one of the top 4 banks in the country. I was like, I'd love to learn more about writing for your team. And so he says, oh yeah, cool. We swap cards, get the business card, and then less than a week later, I shoot him an email. We set up a phone call, and we talk through rates, what he's looking for, and I end up writing an article at $1 per word, and that's an existing relationship today. All starts at a conference next to the food table. This is why you network, for these chance and maybe not so chance opportunities to make big asks of people who can change your career. I went to a men's Bible study. This is how one of my clients pays me $100 an hour. I went to a men's Bible study on a Friday morning and ended up going to the retreat, and the CEO of the company is giving the main talk. And I was just like scribbling notes as fast as I could in my journal because it was such a fascinating conversation. It was his personal story. And afterwards I approached him. I was like, hey man, I love your story. I would love to write about it and put it in an article and publish it if you'd let me. And he's like, okay, cool. Let's talk about that. I meet him at his headquarters. We have coffee. I write the article. He loved it. And now I work for him. And he offered this rate for me. I didn't propose it to him. So you never know what can come from like the smallest things. And that's going to get to the next step in the roadmap. But that came from a Bible study. And then lastly, another $3,000 a month deal from hiking with church friends. We're just chatting, just being honest, like this is what I do. And he works at a startup based in Salt Lake City. And one thing leads to the next. Like we didn't even talk business or about working together on the hike. After the hike, he says, oh, let me mention you to the director of communications at my company. I was like, sweet, cool. I get a phone call from the director of communications outside Starbucks, sitting in the car, and one thing leads to the next, and deal is in ink, $3,000 a month to add on. So that's why it's worth it to go to networking events. Let me give you a secret networking hack, if you haven't picked up on it already. Writers are the best networkers. Here's why. You get access. You can approach someone and say, I can write your story and give you exposure. I can bring value to what you're trying to do. I can help people learn more about what you're trying to accomplish. When you get access to them and you're interviewing them, now you have a long-form conversation. You're like, everything's on the table. You can ask them about their life. And so you're sitting down for an hour and getting to know each other. You're establishing a relationship that's both like professional and personal, but once you publish the article, you have helped them. You've put their message in front of more people. After the article is published, you have their contact info that you can text or call or email anytime. So then you return to number 3 in this roadmap, make big asks, and then boom, you're in business. You have a client, you have an opportunity, your career's changed. So that's why writers make really great networkers, but it doesn't have to be writing. If you return to number 1, the point of having a skill that you love is so that you can add value to someone else's life and what they're aiming to do. So if you do that for free, you can then establish a helpful relationship with a decision maker at a company you want to work at. So the point is, networking creates opportunities that wouldn't otherwise happen. It's often a volume game. It can be uncomfortable, awkward. It takes effort to go out and participate in a networking event. But if you go to the right event with the right people, it can turn into a significant opportunity. So that's my pitch for you to all prioritize going to networking events. Number 5, we got 5, 6, 7. Stick with me. Always be selling. Let's talk about selling. If you're an entrepreneur and you're launching a business, you're a salesperson. You got to know how to sell. So let's talk about selling. Even if you're not an entrepreneur, whether it's one thing and you're working on one thing or many things, you're always on, right? We're talking about portfolio entrepreneurship. There's often like a lot of things you can be selling to the right person at the right time. Author Daniel Pink wrote a book. He said, to sell is human. If it's a part of everything we do, if you're communicating thoughts, trying to persuade someone, making an argument, that's sales. So how can we get good? The question is, how can we get good at selling without being smarmy, inauthentic, or annoying to the people around us? So I found 2 keys that I'd like to put in front of you to consider to authentic selling, and they are, the first, that mentor who pushed the salt shaker at me, saying it was $1 billion, I asked him, he was the best salesperson I've ever seen in my life, just like naturally exuding persuasion. I was like, I want to be like you. What's the best book that you would recommend on being a good salesperson? He said this one, Integrity Selling for the 21st Century, How to Sell the Way People Want to Buy. Not the densest, like most intellectual read you'll ever delve into. It's actually a pretty simple book. The lesson being, replace the idea of selling with helping. Like just take that concept, take that word, swap it out, helping. Here's what that accomplishes. If what you're selling isn't genuinely helpful to someone's life, you're making one of 3 mistakes. This is what let me walk away from my sales job and gives me confidence to sell whatever it is I'm selling in my portfolio, whether it's writing services, party cues, my publication, my book. This mindset of selling helps me be as winsome as I possibly can and like believe with authenticity that I should be selling. If you're making 3 mistakes if you're selling to the wrong person. So if I go up to someone and I'm trying to push, what's a good example here? If I go up to, I'm trying to pick one of my, whether it's my book or my app, if I'm going up to another founder of a conversation starter app and I'm selling party cues, like that's the wrong person to sell to, right? You shouldn't be selling the thing. Maybe it's you. Maybe you're at a job and you're selling some sort of service and it's a good service, like it's a good product, but maybe you shouldn't be selling it. Maybe it's not the right fit for your life experience, what you believe in. It's just like you don't think, you're not really cut out for selling that. Like if I were to sell scientific equipment or fishing rods or something, you know, I'm not passionate about that. I don't love that. So the third kind of filter is the thing shouldn't be sold. Maybe it's the product or the service just isn't something that should be sold or is actually helping someone. So the key to genuinely helping to selling with authenticity is replacing selling with helping. Your sales conversions should dramatically increase. You'll have the confidence to walk away from a bad job. Either way, it will help you sell with integrity. Okay, the second key to sales is self-awareness. Dr. Tasha Eurich, a research psychologist who specializes in self-awareness, calls it the secret weapon of the 21st century. Famous entrepreneur and speaker Gary Vee. Who here has heard of Gary Vee? My man. He said when he's talking to people, he pushes 2 main things in his messaging. One is gratitude, the other is self-awareness. He says self-awareness allows people to recognize the things they do best so that they can go hard on those aspects. It also helps people recognize their weaknesses and maybe how they should work on them or back off and empathize with others. At a networking event, this is how I think of self-awareness when I walk into a networking event. It's the ability to go third person on yourself in a room with other people and see how your presence, your words, your looks affect them. Specifically in sales, consider the following quote. by Dr. Frank Luntz. He said, "It's not what you say, it's what people hear that counts." This blew my mind when I saw this. He wrote a book, Words That Work, and this is kind of the subtitle on that book. Dr. Luntz consulted with U.S. presidents and Fortune 100 companies to help get their messages to resonate and stick. A lot of his work was with focus groups and testing how people reacted to certain words. For example, he's often attributed the credit for replacing terms like global warming with climate change, or drilling for oil with energy exploration. And how you use words can affect how people receive them. So a lot of times we think in sales, we just need to say the right words to get someone to understand. It's a matter of us just talking, trying to persuade, trying to win the argument or make the sale. But this is often not the best approach. Instead, what if we focused on what the other person is thinking and feeling? What if they need time or space to think? What if you ask the right questions that elicit a better frame of mind? Self-awareness is the ability to perceive and understand people's thoughts and feelings and adjust your approach accordingly. So the question is, how do you improve your self-awareness? Dr. Urich, mentioned before, calls self-awareness the infinitely learnable skill. And it seems to divide into two camps for us to study and work on. 1, knowledge of yourself. 2, knowledge of your audience. For increasing knowledge of yourself, I would recommend, as you might expect, writing and journaling and introspecting, where you can kind of process and view how you reacted to certain things. Or, if you're not a writer, find a safe place with people you trust and kind of get feedback on how you were in a group setting, how you seemed. It will help educate you on your presence around other people. For the second thing, knowledge of your audience. Try going to events, observing people, and asking a lot of questions. When I go to networking events, part of that agency job that I had in DC, part of my job was going to networking events twice a week for a year. So I had a whole lot of experience with walking into a room full of strangers and just going for it, talking to as many people as I could. And one thing that I found is that not everyone needs a $100,000 website from a design and development agency. So in that sense, I put on a different hat, maybe party cues. I have this app that you might be interested in. If it was a founder event and no one has a budget of $100,000, then it's okay, not going to make inroads here, but party cues. Or I wrote a book. You basically adjust knowing your audience, knowing who your audience is. You can adjust your approach and your sales pitch for better results. So that's number 5. How do you sell with authenticity? You sell with integrity. Replace selling with helping and with self-awareness. Number 6, scale the right opportunities. 2 more. Ready? At this point, we have a portfolio of work. Here's my clever depiction of having a portfolio of various projects. So we're creating projects, we have our skill, we're creating stuff, we're getting out there, we're networking, we're selling, we're making big asks. Opportunities start pouring in. Time is limited. You're only one person. How do you know what to choose to focus on? Here's how I think about time. Every month or every week, even the day, I aim to balance my time between earning and investing, 2 different mindsets. Earning is directly tying my work to income. It's often an hourly or project rate. It's the most immediate way to pay the bills. But here's the thing. Let me explain investing. Investing is often work that I'm doing where I'm not making income directly, such as writing a book, creating an online course, writing articles, going to networking events. These things don't pay right away, but they have the potential to pay off down the road. So with this paradigm as the backdrop, I then ask myself 3 questions regularly that clarify what I should focus on. Am I doing work that allows for the opportunity of asymmetric risk and reward? Tony Robbins, this is a term that Tony Robbins uses, asymmetric reward, risk reward. He uses it to describe an investment that has an exponentially greater upside than its downside. Could it really take off? And if it fails, can I afford to lose it? Naval Ravikant, the founder and CEO of AngelList, which owns Product Hunt, said, "You're never going to get rich renting out your time." Your time, the earning side of the diagram, has symmetrical risk reward. You put time in, you get money out. Where the investing side, with your time, to extend that, you could hire somebody that would then extend your time, right? So how do you make it passive and scalable beyond you? You're never going to get rich if you're just renting out your time. But how do you make it passive and scalable? That's kind of the dream. That's the goal. This is the investing side. This is what drives me to create a book, write an online course, build an app, invest in a risky over-the-counter stock. They have the potential to make sales in your sleep. Like 15 minutes ago, I just had a $49 sale from one of my online courses while I was standing here. I mean, it was right before we started. That was more than 15 minutes ago. Time. So what happens when something is only mildly successful? How do you know when to quit? That's where I ask this question about opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is the loss of potential gain from other alternatives when one alternative is chosen. To illustrate this, let me tell you how I pulled the plug on a business that was mildly successful. I started a membership-based business called Brew Projects, where creators signed up for $8 a month for accountability, mentorship, and mastermind calls that would help them turn their ideas into income. It grew to $125 a month, which is something. Like, there's traction there. Like, people were signing up. There were members. We had a Slack community, and people were engaged, and I loved the mastermind calls. I was helping people pursue their entrepreneurial visions. But the amount of time it took to keep it up wasn't sustainable, and the other opportunities that were coming in that I had on my plate were far more valuable. So I ended up pulling the plug because the opportunity cost was too high. The other question to ask when you're wondering what to focus on is it comes down to your vision. This is kind of big picture. Whether it's a certain level of income, a lifestyle, an impact, a group of people, your family, your city, traveling, this overall career vision will inform your focus on a day-to-day basis. Some months I make $0. Other months I make upwards of $15,000. It's volatile. It changes. It's open-ended. But overall, when balanced, leads to stable growth. Stable growth is a sign that I'm scaling the right opportunities. So that's step 6. Before we end, I would be doing you a disservice if I finished here. I want to be honest and real about some of the potential downsides to this career approach. So at this point, we've got a full plate. We're networking, we're selling, we're growing, scaling businesses, sales are coming in, making income. It might seem like we're living the dream. Pina coladas on the beach with the laptop, no schedule, no bosses, no pants. Total freedom. It's great, right? I'm my own boss. I can do whatever I want. It's great. Not so fast. Whoa. Interesting emoji substitutions here. That box one almost fits, but so 3 downsides to entrepreneurial freedom. Ready? Loneliness, chaos, and apathy. These are my friends that I'd like to introduce you to. I wrestle with them pretty much every week, and here's how I try to deal with them. Loneliness. So I don't have any teammates. There's no office that I go into every week. Not many of my friends or family members understand quite what I do. It's just me. It can get really lonely sometimes. So one thing that's really helped me is a weekly call I get on every Wednesday night. Not sure if I'm going to get on it tonight at 10 p.m. with 3 other Grove City guys. Spencer Fulmar, a Hollywood screenwriter, producer, director. Gret Glyer, he spoke earlier this year. He's the founder and CEO of DonorSeek. Nick Freiling, the founder and CEO of PeopleFish, a market research company. We get on the phone for up to 3 hours. We'll talk till 1 o'clock in the morning, and we share struggles. We make goals, we poke fun at each other, we keep it real, and we keep each other accountable. It's been a huge reminder that I'm not crazy, I'm not the only one doing this. So with loneliness, it's important to have a community of similar, like-minded entrepreneurs to commiserate and laugh with. Chaos. So the second downside is chaos. With so many irons in the fire and balls in the air, it can become overwhelming and frazzling. There's so much going on any one day. It can be tough to stay focused when you're juggling so much, and it can feel like you're not making any real progress. I should show you guys my to-do list. I use Todoist, cool app, and the number of projects, clients, and businesses that I'm working on make a nice rainbow of labels. So when things get chaotic, I go to this productivity hack that's helped me, and I call it drawing my plate. Nice, you can't see the plate emoji next to draw your plate. Here's what that means. This is very tactical. I take a blank page in my journal. I visually draw out everything that's going on in my mind as circles proportional to the size and the amount of effort and thought they're currently taking up in my head. It's a brain dump, but it's better than a plain list. It allows me to get everything out, see it, map it, and prioritize it, often with a next step, like in that circle, or with an arrow next to it showing, hey, this is increasing in stress or effort or thought space, or it's decreasing, it's moving off the plate. There's always an element of chaos that must be dealt with in this career approach. Entrepreneurial freedom, there's always going to be some degree of chaos. It never goes away. But it requires a mix of time management and prioritization and saying no. It's different for everyone, but you eventually find your process and get better with time. So the last one is apathy. When your work depends completely on your shoulders, it's easy to feel like it all doesn't matter. Like, what's the point? It's just me. If I go away, if I get hit by a bus, I don't think a lot of things are going to change. Does this even mean anything? That's a question that I ask myself a lot with what I'm doing. The only thing motivating you to get out of bed in the morning is you. And sometimes we don't feel like doing anything. Apathy sets in, so what do you do? John Gorman, a writer on Medium, wrote an essay called You're Not Lazy, and it's one of the top stories on Medium of all time, close to 100,000 claps. And in it he wrote, on the surface level, fear is indistinguishable from laziness. 90% of the time when we don't feel like doing something, it's fear. But 90% of people will assume it's laziness, John Gorman says. When I read this essay, I realized that when I wake up and I don't feel like working on anything, it's not because I'm lazy or I don't care, it's because I'm afraid. I'm afraid of what people think. I'm afraid of failure, of looking dumb. It's fear. And when I realize that it's fear, that makes it a different problem. Fear is often more specific. It's a more specific problem to work through, whereas apathy tends to be a more vague and general problem. So in the days when apathy sets in strong, try to identify the specific thing you might be afraid of, and you may uncover something that you weren't aware of. Talk with a friend, pray, and journal. Drink 2 cups of coffee, and you should be good to go. So those are a few of the downsides, but nothing a little community, time management, and self-reflection and coffee can't fix. So, returning to this question, how do you build multiple income streams doing what you love to do from anywhere? Here's how. Follow the roadmap of 7 steps to entrepreneurial freedom. Acquire a skill you love, create things and fail a lot. Make big asks, network, network, network. Always be selling, scale the right opportunities, and counter the downsides. Folks, that's the roadmap to entrepreneurial freedom. Let me leave you with a final thought. Thanks for sticking with me. This question, I don't know how to answer this question. As a 28-year-old, that's okay. I don't need to. I still have time. Maybe you do know your calling. Maybe you're called to a higher education. Maybe you're called to start a nonprofit. Maybe you're called to climb the corporate ladder or ministry or social work. Maybe you're called to launch a startup, raise professional funding, and go on to change the world. Maybe you're like me, and you don't know what you're supposed to do with your life yet. That's okay. Frankly, I don't think there is one thing, and the moment you think you found it, it goes away. It could change, or something better could eventually come along. So here's my point. It's a bad question. Don't worry about it. Don't let it paralyze you. Instead, remember this. Action creates clarity. An anonymous Redditor said, you learn more in 3 days of acting than in 6 months of researching. James Altucher said, your 20s are all about everything, are all about trying everything and experimenting. Don't worry about finding or not finding the job that aligns with the one purpose for your life. That can come later with time, if it even exists at all. Maybe you're supposed to do a lot of things. The next best thing to do is to take action on a vision right now. I've given you my roadmap to entrepreneurial freedom, but the world is a lot bigger than that, and probably bigger than what you and I might think it is right now. God has given us too many opportunities to wait for knowing the answer to the right one. So take action, because action creates clarity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Would you have time for a question or two?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there anybody who would like to ask a burning question? Jordan Hudak. It's making me run.
Hi, thank you so much for speaking. It was awesome.
Good, I'm glad.
How you talked a little bit about giving some value before you necessarily make an ask, like writing an article. How do you balance creating things for free with asking to be paid?
Great question. An example of that is what can you, when you're approaching that person that you want to create value for and do work with, what value can you create, not receive monetary compensation for, but it still is a benefit to your career? That's an investment of your time. You're building a portfolio of work that you can then leverage later on in your life, but you might not be getting paid for it at the moment, and it's also establishing a helpful relationship, getting you in the door, putting your work in front of someone. So I would try and keep that in mind. One quick point about writers. Writers get compensated in 2 ways usually. One is payment, the other is exposure. A lot of times you don't get both. Many of the large media publications don't pay. They just give you exposure. They give you the name. Where if you do ghostwriting or something like copywriting, you can make decent money, but your name's not attached to it. So when determining whether to do something for free, what's the line? Keep in mind that it's going to be benefiting your career. It's going to be an asset that you can put in your pocket to use later. But then you have time, and you need to manage your time accordingly for your career.
Great. Emily.
What did you do during your time at GCC to help improve yourself as an entrepreneur?
I did a lot of different things. I did student government. I did homecoming committee. I was president of my housing group. Did a Crimson and White Society. I just had a call from the Crimson Collars. I was a Crimson Collar. And she's like, she pulled up my profile and she's like, oh, you did a lot of things. And I was like, yeah. So and now that kind of, like, I did a lot of extracurricular activities, a lot of people work. And I realized towards my junior and senior year that academics matter as well. So balancing those two things.
Great, thanks. Any other questions? Oh, yes. Ed.
You just mentioned the example of Benjamin Franklin and the ways that he sharpened his writing skills, and then for you, press releases is kind of what helped you realize that writing was useful and something that you could enjoy. But what did you do more specifically to sharpen your own writing skills?
Post-college?
Or in college?
Or in junior. Reading The New Yorker, that is a meaty, beautiful publication that is like the prime of what good writing looks like. So if I'm about to start a 12-hour day filled with writing, I'm going to open The New Yorker and just get as far as I can. Never let one thing that I would highly recommend as a writer, never let a word you don't understand pass you by. Even if it's in conversation, in a book, dictionary app is the only app I pay for on my phone. Like, I'm looking up that word. If I don't understand what it means, if someone uses a word in a conversation, I'll stop them and say, "Sir, I've never heard that word before. What's that word mean?" Learning. Always be learning. Salespeople always say, always be closing. For writers, always be learning. So.
Thank you. Maybe time for one more. Yeah.
What effect did traveling every 3 months have on, like, did it help sharpen you, strengthen you? Did it discourage you? Like, was that like really what helped to make you? Like, what was that effect?
Yeah. One thing that the reason I left Mitch Cox's companies, that 2.5-year director of marketing job, was because of a piece of advice that an entrepreneur gave to me at a conference in California. He said, in order to succeed as an entrepreneur, you need to be in a place where you are seen. And I was living in a small town, 65,000 population in Johnson City, Tennessee. I wasn't being seen. And so I pursued a job in Washington, D.C. Moving around has given me exposure to different cultures, different people, and different opportunities, different companies. If you go to a networking event in Johnson City, Tennessee, go to a networking event in Los Angeles, you're going to see two totally different groups of people there. Like, these people might have more needs that you could fill, and that might be good, like, hourly consulting work. But if you have an app and you're looking to raise money, then you want to be in San Francisco and go to a meetup there. When we were in San Francisco, I went to an event, and who's giving the talk? Dharmesh Shah, the co-founder of HubSpot. So I go up to him like, "Hey, Dharmesh, could we take a photo?" And so in order to succeed as an entrepreneur, you need to be in a place where you're seen. Traveling around, you're being seen. Go to the big cities, go to conferences, be seen.
Well, Dave, we can't thank you enough for your time, your expertise, your refreshing honesty, and sometimes randomness. It was just really... It was very refreshing, and we appreciate the wisdom you've shared with all of our students here tonight. Can we give him a hand and a big thank you?
Thanks, guys.
Dave will be down here afterward if you want to introduce yourself and make a connection. Feel free to do that. Have a great night, everybody.